It's the final episode of our three-part series on health misinformation, and we want to spend these minutes with you talking about the best strategies for countering misinformation and how we can best deal with misinformation when we come face-to-face with it online. Thanks in part to the NIHCM, that's the topic of this week's Healthcare Triage. So, misinformation's everywhere. It spreads faster than the good information, and telling someone the truth may just entrench them in their original opinion. Sounds like a disaster, because it kind of is. But are things as hopeless as they sound? I'm going to say no, not hopeless. There are some guidelines we can live by when we encounter misinformation, and some strategies we can employ to curb its spread. We spent some of our last episode talking about how to refute misinformation when actively communicating with others. But what about the misinformation we encounter outside of a two-way interaction, like things we see online or information we present in venues like YouTube channels? To the last point, the current default, and the one this channel primarily relies on, is debunking, which involves correcting myths and misinformation that people have already been exposed to. A treatment for misinformation exposure, if you will. This is effective in the right context if done well. Hopefully we do. Evidence suggests that debunking efforts should lead with the truth, appeal to scientific consensus and expert sources, making the correction easy to understand, providing a clear explanation for why the misinformation was wrong, and providing an easily understandable alternative explanation. However, attempts to debunk don't generally reach the same number of people that the original information reaches, and evidence suggests that attempts to debunk run the risk of making people believe even more in the initial misinformation. So what if instead of treating people exposed to misinformation, we tried a preventive measure, also known as prebunking? Much like vaccination, prebunking involves exposing people to misinformation in very diluted doses, accompanied by very strong corrections, with the idea that these exposures will trigger cognitive skills to help combat misinformation encountered in the future. Evidence suggests that such misinformation vaccination decreases the likelihood that an individual will be persuaded by misinformation. There are even video games where players are vaccinated against misinformation by playing the role of a content creator using common strategies to spread misinformation. And randomized controlled trials report that these games are effective at immunizing against the spread of misinformation. Pretty cool. And on a related but distinct note, one study published in 2021 suggests that individuals posting on social media are too distracted by all the available information to consider the accuracy of what they're sharing, and that prompting them to think about accuracy can improve the quality of the information they share. The study took their work to the Twitter platform and selected over 5,000 users who had recently shared links to websites that are known to publish misinformation. Participants were sent messages asking them to rate the accuracy of one non-political headline, with each participant receiving the message on different randomized dates. In the 24 hours following receipt of the message, the quality of information shared by these users improved by nearly 5% when compared to users who had not yet received the message. This type of priming could be an effective tool, but the literature is somewhat mixed on its effectiveness, so we'll be on the lookout for more data in the future. Successfully addressing the spread of misinformation will also require us to take people's social context into account. When we come across a story that we recognize as potentially inaccurate, we may brush that inaccuracy aside if it is telling a story that conforms to the views of our dominant social group. These social goals are going to vary considerably from group to group and person to person, and they likely mean that tailored messages from the right people will be necessary to spread accurate health information. But these are all things that are likely best implemented on a large scale. On a more direct scale, there are some things we can do in the moment when we encounter misinformation. One of those things is not to engage with it. Don't react, even with the little mad face. Don't repost, even if that repost comes with a long refutation that you carefully typed out. Don't comment on it. Do not engage. Why? Because engagement in any form helps the message get before more eyes. And we know that repeated claims are more likely to be judged as true than non-repeated ones. We call it the illusory truth effect, and it's strong. Even people with prior knowledge on a topic or with more analytical thinking styles can easily become victims of the effect. And even though it works for true information as much as it does for untrue, that untrue information just spreads a lot faster. It would be nice if social media algorithms didn't work by promoting content with the most engagement, but that's where we're at, so it's best not to directly engage with misinformation content. Related to that, the World Health Organization recommends reporting false or misleading information to the social media platforms on which they're circulating. The less that misinformation spreads, the better. Correcting misinformation and halting its spread is one of the foundational pillars of this channel. We love it. We could spend a long time discussing this research, all of its nuances, all of its implications, and all of the great ideas out there from people who find this topic as fascinating as we do. But we know you don't have time for a Netflix-length episode, so we're going to stop here. We hope you enjoyed these episodes as much as we enjoyed making them, and we tip our hats once again to the NIHCM for helping to fund this series. Hey, did you enjoy this episode? You should check out the previous 2 episodes of this series on the way we give and receive information. We'd also appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe to the channel. Maybe go on over to patreon.com/Healthcare Triage, where you can help support the show, make it bigger and better. We'd especially like to thank our research associates, Joe Sevitz and Edward Lillaholm, and of course, our Surgeon Admiral, Sam.